Although Pittsburgh Des Moines Steel initially refused to pursue what it considered a precarious venture, the company relented after discovering that leaving the initials would cost $225,000 and after that, $42,000 per month, and the NPS dropped its lawsuit. On October 26, 1965, the International Association of Iron Workers delayed work to ascertain that the arch was safe. After NPS Director Kenneth Chapman gave his word that conditions were perfectly safe, construction resumed on October 27. After the discovery of 16 defects, the tram was also delayed from running. The Bi-State Development Agency assessed that it suffered losses of $2,000 for each day the trains were stagnant. On January 7, 1966, members of AFL-CIO deserted their work at the Visitor Center, refusing to work with plumbers affiliated with the Congress of Industrial Unions, CIO, which represented black plumbers. A representative of AFL-CIO said, "This policy has nothing to do with race. Our experience is that these CIO members have in the past worked for substandard wages." CIO applied to the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, for an injunction that required the AFL-CIO laborers to return to work. On February 7, Judge John Keating Regan ruled that AFL-CIO workers had participated in a secondary boycott. By February 11, AFL-CIO resumed work on the arch, and an AFL-CIO contractor declared that 10 African Americans were apprenticed for arch labor. The standstill and work lasted a month. Considering how large federal projects often go haywire, Secretary of War Newton D. Baker said, "This memorial will be like a cathedral built slowly but surely." President Lyndon B. Johnson and Mayor Alfonso J. Cervantes decided on a date for the topping out ceremony, but the arch had not been completed by then. The ceremony date was reset to October 17, 1965. Workers strained to meet the deadline, taking double shifts, but by October 17, the arch was still not complete. The chairman of the ceremony anticipated the ceremony to be held on October 30, a Saturday, to allow 1,500 schoolchildren, whose signatures were to be placed in a time capsule, to attend. Ultimately, PTM set the ceremony date to October 28. The time capsule, containing the signatures of 762,000 students and others, was welded into the keystone before the final piece was set in place. On October 28, the arch was topped out as then Vice President Hubert Humphrey observed from a helicopter. A Catholic priest and a rabbi prayed over the keystone, a 10-short ton, 9.1 tons, 8 foot long, 2.4 meters, triangular section. It was slated to be inserted at 10 a.m. local time but was done 30 minutes early because thermal expansion had constricted the 8.5 foot, 2.6 meters, gap at the top by 5 inches, 13 centimeters. To mitigate this, workers used fire hoses to spray water on the surface of the south leg to cool it down and make it contract. The keystone was inserted in 13 minutes with only 6 inches, 15 centimeters, remaining. For the next section, a hydraulic jack had to pry apart the legs 6 feet, 1.8 meters. The last section was left only 2.5 feet, 0.76 meters. By noon, the keystone was secured. Some filmmakers, in hope that the two legs would not meet, had chronicled every phase of construction. The Gateway Arch was expected to open to the public by 1964. But in 1967 the Public Relations Agency stopped forecasting the opening date. The Arch's Visitor Center opened on June 10, 1967, and the tram began operating on July 24. The arch was dedicated by Humphrey on May 25, 1968. He declared that the arch was a soaring curve in the sky that links the rich heritage of yesterday with the richer future of tomorrow and brings a new purpose and a new sense of urgency to wipe out every slum. Whatever is shoddy, whatever is ugly, whatever is waste, whatever is false, will be measured and condemned in comparison to the Gateway Arch. About 250,000 people were expected to attend, but train cancelled the outdoor activities. The ceremony had to be transferred to the Visitor Center. After the dedication, Humphrey crouched beneath an exit as he waited for the rain to subside so he could walk to his vehicle. The project did not provide 5,000 jobs as expected. As of June 1964, workers numbered fewer than 100. The project did, however, inside other riverfront restoration efforts, totaling $150 million. Building projects included a 50,000-seat sports stadium, a 30-story hotel, several office towers, 4 parking garages, and an apartment complex. The idea of a Disneyland amusement park that included synthetic riverboat attractions was considered but later abandoned. The developers hoped to use the arch as a commercial catalyst, attracting visitors who would use their services. One estimate found that since the 1960s, the arch has incited almost $503 million worth of construction. In June 1976, the memorial was finalized by federal evocation to the statue of Thomas Jefferson was unveiled. The Museum of Westward Expansion was previewed. A theater under the arch was dedicated in honor of Mayor Raymond Tucker, and the catenary-like curving staircases from the arch down to the levee were built. Both the width and height of the arch are 630 feet. 192 meters. The arch is the tallest memorial in the United States and the tallest stainless steel monument in the world. The cross-sections of the arch's legs are equilateral triangles, narrowing from 54 feet, 16 meters, per side as the bases to 17 feet, 5.2 meters, per side as the top. Each wall consists of a stainless steel skin covering a sandwich of 2 carbon steel walls with reinforced concrete in the middle from ground level to 300 feet, 91 meters, with carbon steel to the peak. The arch is hollow to accommodate a unique tramp system that takes visitors to an observation deck at the top. The structural load is supported by a stressed skin design. Each leg is embedded in 25,980 short tons. 23,570 tons, of concrete 44 feet, 13 meters, thick and 60 feet, 18 meters, deep, 20 feet, 6.1 meters, of the foundation is in bedrock. The arch is resistant to earthquakes and is designed to sway up to 18 inches, 46 centimeters, in either direction while withstanding winds up to 150 miles per hour. 240 kilometers per hour. The structure weighs 42,878 short tons, 38,898 tons, of which concrete composes 25,980 short tons, 23,570 tons, structural steel interior, 2,157 short tons, 1,957 tons, and the 6.3 mm thick grade 304 stainless steel panels that cover the exterior of the arch, 886 short tons, 804 tons. This amount of stainless steel is the most used in any one project in history. The base of each leg gate ground level had to have an engineering tolerance of 1/64 inch, 0.40 millimeters, or the 2 legs would not meet at the top. The geometric form of the structure was set by mathematical equations provided to Saarinen by Hans Karl Bandel. Bruce Dittmers and other architects expressed the geometric form and blueprints with this equation. This hyperbolic cosine function describes the shape of a catenary. A chain that supports only its weight forms a catenary. The chain is purely in tension. Likewise, an inverted catenary arch that supports only its weight is purely in compression, with no shear. The catenary arch is the stablest of all arches since the thrust passes through the legs and is absorbed in the foundations, instead of forcing the legs apart. The gateway arch itself is not a common catenary, but a more general curve of the form y equals x, bx. This makes it an inverted weighted catenary. Saarinen chose a weighted catenary over a normal catenary curve because it looked less pointed and less steep. In 1959, he caused some confusion about the actual shape of the arch when he wrote, "This arch is not a true parabola, as is often stated. Instead, it is a catenary curve via the curve of a hanging chain, a curve in which the forces of thrust are continuously kept within the center of the legs of the arch." William V. Thayer, a professor of mathematics at St. Louis Community College, later wrote to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch calling attention to the fact that the structure was a weighted catenary. The first proposal to illuminate the arch at night was announced on May 18, 1966. But the plan never came to fruition. In July 1998, funding for an arch lighting system was approved by St. Louis Gateway Foundation, which agreed to take responsibility for the cost of the equipment, its installation, and its upkeep. In January 1999, MSNBC arranged a temporary lighting system for the arch so the monument could be used as the background for a visit by Pope John Paul II. Since November 2001, the arch has been bathed in white light between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. via a system of floodlights, designed by Randy Burkett. It comprises 44 lighting fixtures situated in 4 pits just below ground level. On October 5, 2004, the U.S. Senate, at the pressing of Senators Jim Talent and Kit Bond, approved a bill permitting the illumination in pink of the arch in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Both Estee Lauder and May department store company had championed the cause. One employee said that the arch would be a beacon for the importance of prevention and finding a cure, while the National Park Service took issue with the plan due to the precedent it would set for prospective uses of the arch. It yielded due to a realization that it and Congress were on the same team and because the illumination was legally obligatory on October 25. The plan was carried out. The previous time the arch was illuminated for promotional purposes was on September 12, 1995, under the management of local companies Fleischmann Hillard and Technical Productions, when a rainbow spectrum was shown on the arch to publicize the debut of Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus Wizard of Oz on Ice at the Kiel Center. In April 1965, 3 million tourists were expected to visit the arch annually. After completion, 619,763 tourists visited the top of the arch in its first year open. On January 15, 1969, a visitor from Nashville, Tennessee, became the 1 millionth person to reach the observation area. The 10 millionth person ascended to the top on August 24, 1979. In 1974, the arch was ranked 4th on a list of most visited man-made attractions. The Gateway Arch is one of the most visited tourist attractions in the world, with over 4 million visitors annually, of which around 1 million travel to the top. The arch was listed as a National Historic Landmark on June 2, 1987, and is also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. On December 8, 2009, sponsored by the nonprofit City Arch River 2015, the international design competition Framing a Modern Masterpiece, The City Plus the Arch Plus the River 2015 commenced. It aimed to design a plan to improve the riverfront park landscape, ease access for pedestrians across Memorial Drive and expand onto the East St. Louis riverfront, as well as to attract visitors. The contest consisted of 3 stages: a portfolio assessment, narrowed down to 8 A10 teams, team interviews, narrowed down to 4 A5 teams, and review of design proposals. The competition received 49 applicants, which were narrowed down to 5 in the first 2 stages. On August 17, 2010, the designs of the 5 finalists were revealed to the public and exhibited at the theater below the arch. On August 26, the finalists made their cases to an 8-member jury, and on September 21, the winner was revealed at the Michael Van Valkenburg Associates. The initiative's plans include updating Keener Plaza and the Old Courthouse, connecting the city to the arch grounds with a park over Interstate 70, a reimagined museum, and improved accessibility. The budget for the project is $380 million and was set to be completed in 2018. Ground broke on the Park Over the Highway project, the first component of the City Arch River project, on August 2, 2013. This project features a landscaped structure over Interstate 70 and rerouted surface traffic that had previously formed a moat separating the Gateway Arch from the Old Courthouse. This project was completed in December 2014. The underground visitor center for the arch was designed as part of the National Park Service's Mission 66 program. The 70,000 square foot, 6,500 square meters, center is located directly below the arch, between its legs. Although construction on the visitor center began at the same time as construction for the arch itself, it did not conclude until 1976 because of insufficient funding. However, the center opened with several exhibits on June 10, 1967. Access to the visitor center is provided through ramps adjacent to each leg of the arch. The center houses offices, mechanical rooms, and waiting areas for the arch trams, as well as its main attractions, the Museum of Westward Expansion and 2 theaters displaying films about the arch. The older theater opened in May 1972. The newer theater, called the Odyssey Theater, was constructed in the 1990s and features a 4-story tall screen. Its construction required the expansion of the underground complex, and workers had to excavate solid rock while keeping the disruption to a minimum so the museum could remain open. The museum houses several hundred exhibits about the United States westward expansion in the 19th century and opened on August 10, 1977. As part of the City Arch River project, the Visitor Center and Museum underwent a $176 million expansion and renovation that was completed in July 2018. Once completed, the renovation will include a 46,000 square foot underground addition featuring interactive story galleries, video walls, a fountain and a cafe. Near the top of the arch, passengers exit the tram compartment and climb a slight grade to enter the observation area. This arch deck, which is over 65 feet, 20 meters, long and 7 feet, 2.1 meters, wide, can hold up to about 160 people, equivalent to the number of people from 4 trams. 16 windows per side, each measuring 7 by 27 inches, 180 mm 8 - 690 mm, offer views up to 30 miles, 48 kilometers, to the east across the Mississippi River and southern Illinois with its prominent Mississippian culture mounds at Cahokia Mountain, to the west over the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County beyond. There are 3 modes of transportation up the arch, 2 sets of 1,076-step emergency stairs, 1 per leg, a 12-passenger elevator to the 372-foot, 113 meters, height, and a tram in each leg. Each tram is a chain of 8 cylindrical, 5-seat compartments with a small window on the doors. As each tram has a capacity of 40 passengers and there are 2 trams, 80 passengers can be transported at one time, with trams departing from the ground every 10 minutes. The cars swing like Ferris wheel cars as they ascend and descend the arch. This fashion of movement gave rise to the idea of the tram as a half Ferris wheel and half elevator. The trip to the top takes 4 minutes, and the trip down takes 3 minutes. Because of a lack of funds in March 1962, the NPS did not accept bids for the arch's internal train system and considered discarding the idea. In May 1962, the Bi-State Development Agency proposed that it issue revenue bonds to obtain the required funds. The Department of the Interior and Bi-State entered into an agreement where Bi-State would construct and operate the tram. Bi-State would have to raise $1,977,750 for the construction of the tram system. It retired the bonds by setting a $1 riding fee to the top. Bi-State put in $3.3 million revenue bonds and has operated the tram system since. The tram in the north leg entered operation in June 1967, but visitors were forced to endure 3-hour-long waits until April 21, 1976, when a reservation system was put in place. The South Tram was completed by March 1968. Commemorative pins were awarded to the first 100,000 passengers. As of 2007, the trams have traveled 250,000 miles, 400,000 kilometers, conveying more than 25 million passengers. On July 8, 1970, a 6-year-old boy, his mother, and 2 of her friends were trapped in a tram in the arch's south leg after the monument closed. According to the boy's mother, the group went up the arch around 9:30 p.m. CDT, but when the tram reached the deboarding area, its doors did not open. The tram then reportedly traveled up to a storage area 50 feet, 15 meters, above the ground, and the power was switched off. One person was able to pry open the tram door and the 4 managed to reach a security guard for help after being trapped for about 45 minutes. On July 21, 2007, a broken cable forced the South Tram to be shut down, leaving only the North Tram in service until repairs were completed in March 2008. Around 200 tourists were stuck inside the arch for about 3 hours because the severed cable contacted a high-voltage rail, causing a fuse to blow. The North Tram was temporarily affected by the power outage as well, but some passengers were able to exit the arch through the emergency stairs and elevator. It was about 2 hours until all the tram riders safely descended, while those in the observation area at the time of the outage had to wait an additional hour before being able to travel back down. An arch official said the visitors, most of whom stayed calm during the ordeal, were not in any danger and were later given refunds. The incident occurred while visitors in the arch were watching a fireworks display, and no one was seriously injured in the event. However, 2 people received medical treatment. One person needed oxygen and the other was diabetic. Almost immediately after the tram returned to service in 2008, however, it was closed again for new repairs after an electrical switch broke. The incident, which occurred on March 14, was billed as a bad coincidence. On the morning of February 9, 2011, a National Park Service worker was injured while performing repairs on the South Tram. The 55-year-old was working on the tram's electrical system when he was trapped between it and the arch wall for around 30 seconds, until being saved by other workers. Emergency officials treated the injured NPS employee at the arch's top before taking him to St. Louis University Hospital in serious condition. On March 24, 2011, around 100 visitors were stranded in the observation area for 45 minutes after the doors of the South Tram refused to close. The tourists were safely brought down the arch in the North Tram, which had been closed that week so officials could upgrade it with a new computer system. The National Park Service later attributed the malfunction to a computer glitch associated with the new system, which had already been implemented with the South Tram. No one was hurt in the occurrence. Around 2:15 p.m. local time on June 16, 2011, the arch's North Tram stalled due to a power outage. The tram became stuck about 200 feet, 61 meters, from the observation deck, and passengers eventually were told to climb the stairs to the observation area. It took National Park Service workers about 1 hour to manually pull the tram to the top, and the 40 trapped passengers were able to return down on the South Tram, which had previously not been operating that day because there was not an abundance of visitors. An additional 120 people were at the observation deck at the time of the outage and also exited via the South Tram. During the outage, visitors were stuck in the tram with neither lighting nor air conditioning. No one was seriously injured in the incident, but one visitor lost consciousness after suffering a panic attack, and a park ranger was taken away with minor injuries. The cause of the outage was not immediately known. On June 16, 1965, the Federal Aviation Administration cautioned that aviators who flew through the arch would be fined and their licenses revoked. At least 10 pilots disobeyed this order, beginning on June 22, 1966. In 1973, Nikki Kaplan was granted an exception to fly a hot air balloon between the arch's legs as part of the Great Forest Park Balloon Race. During the flight, on which the Street Louis Park director was a passenger, the balloon hit the arch and plummeted 70 feet before recovering. In 1976, a U.S. Army exhibition skydiving team was permitted to fly through the arch as part of 4th of July festivities, and since then, numerous skydiving exhibition teams have legally jumped onto the arch grounds, after having flown their parachutes through the legs of the arch. The arch has been a target of various stunt performers, and while such feats are generally forbidden, several people have parachuted to or from the arch regardless. In June 1980, the National Park Service declined a request by television producers to have a performer jump from the arch. A similar appeal by stuntman Dan Coco was also turned away in February 1986. Coco, who was a stunt double for Superman, wanted to perform the leap during the 4th of July celebrations. In 2013, Alexander Pauly, a European-based jumper, planned to fly a wingsuit under the arch but had his demo postponed by the FAA. On November 22, 1980, at about 8:45 a.m. CST, 33-year-old Kenneth Swires of Overland, Missouri, parachuted onto the top of the arch. He planned to release his main parachute and then jump off the arch using his reserve parachute to perform a base jump. Unfortunately, after landing, the wind blew him to the side, and he slid down the north leg to his death. The accident was witnessed by several people, including Swires' wife, also a parachutist. She said her husband was not a hot dog, daredevil skydiver, and that he had prepared for the jump 2 weeks in advance. Swires, who had made over 1,600 jumps before the incident, was reported by one witness to have landed very well on the top of the arch, but had no footing. Swires was reportedly blown to the top of the arch by the wind and was unable to save himself when his reserve parachute failed to deploy. The Federal Aviation Administration said the jump was unauthorized and investigated the pilot involved in the incident. On December 27, 1980, St. Louis television station KTVI reported receiving calls from supposed witnesses of another stunt landing. The alleged parachutist, who claimed to be a retired professional stuntman, was said to be wearing a Santa Claus costume when he jumped off an airplane around 8 a.m. CST, parachuted onto the arch, grasped the monument's beacon, and used the same parachute to glide down unharmed. KTVI said it was told the feat was done as an act of homage to Swires, and apparently was a combination of a dare, a drunk, and a tribute. On the day after the alleged incident, authorities declared the jump a hoax. A spokesperson for the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department said no calls were received about the jump until after it was broadcast on the news, and the Federal Aviation Administration said the two calls it had received were very similar. One caller also left an out-of-service phone number, while the other never followed up with investigators. Arch officials said they did not witness any such jump, and photos provided by the alleged parachutist were unclear. On September 14, 1992, 25-year-old John C. Vincent climbed to the top of the gateway arch using suction cups and proceeded to parachute back to the ground. He was later charged with 2 misdemeanors, climbing a national monument and parachuting in a national park. Federal prosecutor Stephen Higgins called the act a great stunt but said it was something the Park Service doesn't take lightly. Vincent, a construction worker and diver from Harvey, Louisiana, said he did it just for the excitement, just for the thrill, and had previously parachuted off the World Trade Center in May 1991. He said that scaling the arch wasn't that hard and that he had considered a jump off the monument for a few months. In an interview, Vincent said he visited the arch's observation area a month before the stunt, to see if he could use a maintenance hatch for accessing the monument's peak. Due to the heavy security, he instead decided to climb up the arch's exterior using suction cups, which he had used before to scale shorter buildings. Dressed in black, Vincent began crawling up the arch around 3:30 a.m. CST on September 14 and arrived undetected at the top around 5:45 a.m., taking an additional 75 minutes to rest and take photos before finally jumping. During this time, he was seen by 2 traffic reporters inside the One Metropolitan Square skyscraper. Vincent was also spotted midair by Daryl Stone, a chief ranger for the National Park Service. Stone reported seeing Vincent grab his parachute after landing and run to a nearby car, which quickly drove away. However, authorities were able to detain 2 men on the ground who had been videotaping the jump. Stone said 37-year-old Ronald Carroll and 27-year-old Robert Weinzettel, both St. Louis residents, were found with a wireless communication headset and a video camera, as well as a still camera with a telephoto lens. The 2 were also charged with 2 misdemeanors, disorderly conduct and commercial photography in a national park. Vincent later turned himself in and initially pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. However, he eventually accepted a guilty plea deal in which he testified against Carroll and Weinzettel, revealing that the 2 consented to record the jump during a meeting of all 3 on the day before his stunt occurred. Federal Magistrate Judge David Dinos ruled on January 28, 1993, that Carroll had been involved in a conspiracy and was guilty of both misdemeanor charges. The charges against Weinzettel were dropped by federal prosecutors. In his decision, No stated, "There are places in our country where the sufficiently skilled can savor the exhilaration and personal satisfaction of accomplishing courageous and intrepid acts, of reaching dreamed of heights and for coursing dangerous adventures," but added that other places are designed for the exhilaration of mere observation and for the appreciation of the imaginings and the works of others. St. Louis Arch and the grounds of the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial are in the latter category. After his guilty plea, Vincent was sentenced to a $1,000 fine, 25 hours of community service, and a year's probation. In December 1992, Vincent was sentenced to 90 days in jail for violating his probation. 2 years after the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, a little over $1 million was granted to institute a counterterrorism program. Park officials were trained to note the activity of tourists, and inconspicuous electronic detection devices were installed. After the September 11 attacks in 2001, security efforts became more prominent and security checkpoints moved to the entrance of the visitor center. At the checkpoints, visitors are screened by magnetometers and X-ray equipment, devices that have been in place since 1997. The arch also became one of several U.S. monuments placed under restricted airspace during the 2002 4th of July celebrations. In 2003, 10-foot-long, 3.0 meters, 32-inch high, 81 centimeters, and 4,100-pound, 1,900 kilograms, movable jersey barriers were installed to impede terrorist attacks on the arch. Later that year, it was announced that these walls were to be replaced by concrete posts encased in metal to be more harmonious with the steel color of the arch. The movable bollards can be manipulated from the park's dispatch center, which has also been upgraded. In 2006, arch officials hired a physical security specialist, replacing a law enforcement officer. The responsibilities of the specialist include risk assessment, testing the park's security system, increasing security awareness of other employees, and working with other government agencies to improve the arch's security procedures. Built as a monument to the westward expansion of the United States, the arch typifies the pioneer spirit of the men and women who won the West, and those of a latter day to strive on other frontiers. The arch has become the iconic image of Street Louis, appearing in many parts of city culture. In 1968, 3 years after the monument's opening, the Street Louis phone directory contained 65 corporations with Gateway in their title and 17 with Arch. Arches also appeared over gas stations and drive-in restaurants. In the 1970s, a local sports team adopted the name Fighting Arches. Street Louis Community College would later, when consolidating all athletic programs under a single banner, name its sports teams Archers. Robert S. Chandler, an MPS superintendent, said, "Most visitors are awed by the size and scale of the arch, but they don't understand what it's all about. Too many people see it as just a symbol of the city of Street Louis." The arch has also appeared as a symbol of the state of Missouri. On November 22, 2002, at the Missouri State Capitol, Lori Hauser Holden, wife of then-Governor Bob Holden, uncovered the winning design for a Missouri coin design competition as part of the 50 States Commemorative Coin Program. Designed by watercolorist Paul Jackson, the coin portrays 3 members of the Lewis and Clark expedition paddling a boat on the Missouri River upon returning to Street Louis with the arch as the backdrop. Holden said that the arch was a symbol for the entire state. 4 million visitors each year see the arch. The coin will help make it even more loved worldwide. A special license plate designed by Arnold Worldwide featured the arch, labeled with Gateway to the West. Profits earned from selling the plates would fund the museum and other educational components of the arch. Lau Chaim wrote that although the arch has a simplicity which should guarantee timeliness, it is entirely modern as well because of the innovative design and its scientific considerations. In the Dallas Morning News, architectural critic David Dillon opined that the arch exists not as a functional edifice but as a symbol of boundless American optimism. He articulates the arch's multiple moods: a reflective and sun